So, welcome everybody to this very special edition of Unbound Live, where we are celebrating the launch of our very first collaborative book here at the Unbound Press, 2020 Vision, Unbound Perspectives from a year like no other. Yeah, what to say about this book and this experience? It's come together really, really quickly, actually. First had the idea at the end of last year, I think at the beginning of November. Sarah Lloyd, who is here with us, Sarah of Indigo Soul PR, and I were on a call, and right at the end of that call, Sarah said to me, she said, "Oh, like, I can't remember the exact words actually." She was like, "Well, maybe we could do something about 2020 with the different authors and each person writing something about their experience of the year." And as soon as Sarah said those words, I was like, yes, that sounds amazing. Let's do it. But obviously that was right kind of like towards the end of the year, and knew that we had to act quickly on it. And we had the Unbound Writing Challenge coming up later that month. So, and I knew I wanted to do a writing competition as part of that, where somebody would win a publishing package with the Unbound Press. So I was like, well, this feels perfect. We can do this as all part of the same thing. So we did, and we invited our existing authors and also people who were part of the Unbound Writing Challenge to send in their submissions, writing about their experience of 2020. And oh my goodness, the results were just incredible. We actually had far more than we could actually include in the book, and we chose, well, it was 20, but we actually have 21 because Carrie used to hear her amazing poem is actually the final part of the book. So we brought together these contributions, and they are now here in this paperback, which I have literally just got my copy of today because we did everything so quickly. This is like the very first paperback copy of it that anyone has. So they will be winging their way out into the world now. And I'm really excited to have quite a few of the contributors here with me today to speak about their pieces. And when I was writing the introduction for the book, you know, what came through for me really strongly, I mean, it felt like such a privilege to be able to read each of the contributions before anyone else had seen them, like just obviously the person who'd written them could have seen it. But for me to kind of read through them all, and the way like each one is so unique and bringing through something different in relation to 2020, but there are also these common themes coming together. And like I very often say, when we come together, we become more. And I think that idea, that energy of collaboration, connection, co-creation is going to be even more important as we journey on through the 2020s. Certainly it's something that came through very strongly for me last year. And so it just feels incredible for us to all be doing this together. And actually, before we went live, you know, we were all talking about how we're feeling today, and there's a real range of emotions because, you know, the pieces in this book they're raw and they're real, and it can feel vulnerable to write, but it does feel vulnerable to write from that place. So I am so grateful to each of the magical beings who are here with me live today, and also like everyone else, all the other contributors who couldn't be here live, but their pieces are just incredible. So there's kind of almost too much magic in one space here. We had a contributor call in January, and it's like, oh wow, like the energy of this. I'm hoping Zoom can handle it, because in my experience, when you have this much magic in one Zoom room, things can go a bit glitchy, but let's hold space for it all to be perfect. So I'm going to be speaking to each one of the contributors who is here with me live in the order that your pieces are in the book. And so I'm going to be coming to Natalie first, Natalie Farrell. Yay.
Hi,
Hello,
everybody.
my lovely.
Hello,
How are
hello,
you doing?
Nicola. Very good, thank you very much. Very good. I am very excited about this day and this birthing of all of our rawness, you know.
Absolutely. And you are writing, well, you're nearly at the end of writing your first book at the moment, during that editing process.
I am, yes, yes, yes.
Which is a very specific part of the process, which can feel quite challenging, I know. So it feels
Yeah.
good that you've got this kind of 2020 vision going out into the world,
Yeah.
to kind of balance that out a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I've created like my own writing den now, so I can just go in, like crawl in and edit or rewrite. Some of it feels a bit like a rewrite, but yeah, it feels nice to be out of the den.
Oh, wonderful to see you. So your piece was called Unearthing the Truth.
Yes.
And this is kind of something I could ask everybody, because so much, like we all experienced so much in 2020. How did you decide, like, how to bring all of that together and what to actually write about? What was that process like for you?
Oh,
Can you
love it.
remember?
Yeah, I remember it was fairly warm and I was sitting outside, and very much like the writing process of writing the book, it just almost seems to naturally come. But I think the starting point definitely was for me that it felt like people had to face the truth. And then that word unearthing came because I felt that, you know, we were being shown things that we may not have wanted to have seen, both within ourselves and within the world. So it felt like there was a lot of turbulence coming up from, you know, from the earth. And as I said, I felt like Mother Earth was spewing for us so that we could like find and face our inner demons. So that was kind of how it started, in the sense of facing the truth. But I remember walking, it was actually, we were in lockdown on this day, on the Sunday. I remember walking with my soulmate and my little doggy going, where is everybody? Like, got home and they said, you got to be in your home now for 2 months. And I live in Spain and we literally could only walk about 5 meters from our house for 2 months. No way, I said. Who dares to tell me that I have to stay in my house? And that was kind of the starting point, I think, the two starting points and themes for writing it.
Mm. And actually, I remember you speaking about that in your piece, and then you kind of had this experience where you actually found it really powerful to be like staying in your house and only actually being able to go out for a very short amount of time each day.
Yeah, I was so surprised at how quickly I conformed to being in my house. But I think more about actually creating a structure for the day. That was the way that I was coping. And then I went very quickly on to teaching yoga online. I was on Facebook then, and I was built a community. You know, people kind of rushed to that community because that's what people were looking for. And then there was another moment for me where I was like, this is my time to serve, because I have dedicated a lot of time to self-devotion, self-actualization. Okay, if there is no other time, this is the time to be there for my people. Yeah, and that felt very, very strong, and it helped me as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that came through very strongly last year for a lot of us, that kind of sense of like being in service that helped to kind of get us through. Definitely.
Yeah, totally and utterly. Yeah. So yeah, and then the rest seemed to flow, really.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And such a gorgeous poem. That's why I felt felt really good to have your
Yay.
piece at the beginning with that.
Yeah.
Like we begin with a poem and we end with a poem, like in the book. So absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And just to say, as you said, that, you know, this idea of collaboration, and the year before my kind of motivation was together is better. And then that kind of, you know, manifested into finding you and all my Unbound sisters. So the ode to my Unbound sisters is just so poignant, and you all mean so much to me.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you for being part of it.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Natalie. And now I'm going to come to Sue. Sue, yay! Sue's piece. Sue actually won the 2020 Vision writing competition with her piece. Selected excerpts from the 2020 solo self-isolation diaries. So Sue won a publishing package with us and is just preparing to write their first book, which is very exciting. And like all of the pieces, like are all incredible. But when I read Sue's piece and actually shared it with some of the other members of the Unbound Press team, Sarah being one of them, I remember Sarah's comment coming back. She was like these are all amazing, but this one, I think you said it kicked you in the nuts. Your word. And I get that, you know, when I read it, I just had this really visceral sense of, wow, these words are so potent. So thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
How you feeling? How you doing?
Well, it's interesting because I was just saying before that I actually felt I've not been feeling good today, and I'm like, why am I not feeling good today? And I think that I think today means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And I can't say too much or I might fall apart.
And there's lots of nods.
Yeah, there's lots of nods. And so, yeah, and because like the piece that I submitted, these are kind of a hybrid morning pages. This is my internal therapist. Yeah. This is me. I have a method which I've developed of if something's circling in my head and I can't get out of it, what I do is I say it and I speak it into something. So the act of saying it. So I speak it into something. And what I learned was, and this is the first bit of my piece, is what I learned is I could speak it into my microphone and my laptop would take the words and put it up on the page. And that was really helpful. But then I realized that it was censoring me. It basically, and I'm like, is this deliberate again? And it just like, it was very reflective. And for me, I've been solo for 12 months now, pretty much solo, self-isolating. And it's hard to remember what it's like to be a human being. And through this entire period of this 12 months, I've been transitioning from being menstruating into perimenopause, menopause. And so I'm devoid of touch. I am devoid of feeling another. And it is a cold phase at times. But what was also really, really interesting is I dropped out of hyperarousal in lockdown 1. And I don't know if anybody's been depressed before. I certainly have. And you have that moment when you come out of depression, you go, shit, I was depressed for X amount of time. Oh my God, I was depressed for like a year. And, you know, it's interesting. I only really truly value the people who talk about depression, who talk about that aha moment, the aha moment of going, shit, I was depressed. And I had that with hyperarousal. I dropped out of hyperarousal, which is a trauma state. And I dropped, I dropped out of it because I wasn't woken up by drills. I wasn't kept awake by parties. I wasn't inhaling. I wasn't holding my breath to stop the inhalation of cigarette smoke. And actually, I let go of all the expectations of what being a social, successful person is, having all these amazing dates and meeting hot people and having a group of friends that are just the best friends. And now when all that fell away, I remembered who I was.
Mm.
And it was like, shit, a break. Is this what it's like when you're not completely self-regulating all of the time?
Yeah.
So that happened, and a whole load of other stuff, because I was less permanently terrified, permanently fearful. I was like, okay, what about if we put some of that other stuff down onto paper too?
Mm. Mm. Wow.
And now, and I think probably what's happening now, I'm a little bit back in hyperarousal maybe, because I'm so isolated and I don't know how to be in connection in the whatever the real world is now.
Yeah.
And so, I'm noticing. That's what I'm noticing.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's this, it's like in the UK where we are, where there's like talk of everything starting to open back up. It's like I found myself at the beginning of the week being like, ooh, feels a bit. Are we just going to go back to that kind of old way of being? I don't know if I want that particularly. So it feels strange to me.
Yeah. And just on that, the one thing I'd like to say, and this is one of the things I realized, that I might be enough. That's what I realized. And what's coming back now is when I realized that I might be enough, just as I am. And what I'm working with at the moment is, how do I behave if I already know I'm enough? And when lockdown opens up, I am terrified that nobody's going to invite me to anything. I mean, part of me wants to give myself a cuddle.
Yeah.
If I could.
Yeah.
So anyway, there you go.
Group hug. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we will do another collaborative book at the end of this year about 2021 and all of this stuff about coming out of lockdown and like the repercussions of that and the what transformation that's activated. Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you.
I could speak to each one of you all day. This is really hard for me to try. But Sue is my guest in the Unbound Writers Club podcast this week. So we dive into much more in that episode. So if anybody wants a little bit more Sue, that's a good place to go to. Thank you. So Tonya and your piece, which is called Rebirth. And again, like Tonya, you're writing your first book at the moment, The New Commodities. You're at that stage right at the end where you're editing it. And I know, like when we were taking the submissions for 2020 Vision, you were messaging me saying, look, I'm like coming to the end of my book. I'm like doing all this stuff. Like, when do you need this by? Because I really want to do it, but I'm really focused on my book right now. So how did it, and you found time for it and you wrote an amazing piece. Like, how was it different? How was this piece different from the experience of writing your book?
I think Sue just said it best. It's a piece of the morning pages, because I also do morning pages. And so it was refreshing from writing my book and having a different piece, because it's a totally different tone. Whereas my book, I'm teaching something that I teach out in the world on money. And so there's a script almost to follow, even though it's coming through a certain way. this was totally free in whatever it is I was wanting to write and feeling drawn to write, and about my emotions and everything that was going on for 2020, which was a year of it was just a roller coaster. Is not, it was like an endless roller coaster. And so yeah, I think it just felt very freeing to, and because it was only a limited amount of time that I had, I couldn't overthink it. So I just remember taking your writing prompts, which were all deliciously wonderful questions, and I circled the ones that I really felt drawn to. And then I just wrote a piece for each prompt. And then as I looked at them, I kind of took the stories that kind of impacted me the most for 2020 and put them into that one piece, and kind of, they then formed a timeline for the year. And so I was able to share my experience of, you know, when the year first started out, and we started at the Unbound retreat in London, because I'm in New York. And so I was traveling, and I'm like, oh my, traveling, like, whew, that seems like something that just doesn't happen anymore. And we got stuck in a hailstorm at the Unbound retreat, knowing that we're like, what is happening? And I kind of feel like that was the prelude to the year to come.
What did we do?
Yeah, we danced until it hurt, and then we went inside. But yeah, it felt like something was being invoked. But, and I think Natalie said this too, but I felt more than anything, it was, you know, nature, mother, saying, like, showing her fierce, ferocious side. And she could be very gentle, and then at times again, she doesn't apologize for it. And so it, you know, the piece is titled Rebirth because I believe in what I teach is that through chaos comes the clarity of things, and through, and it pains me that we have to go through chaos in order to know what's wrong. Like, it would just be nice if we just knew something wasn't and we didn't have to go through that pain. But sometimes it's necessary to see what's not working. And I do feel like it showed a lot of the systems and things that are put in place that are not working. And so it's a pain point, and the gift of pain is that we break to have a point of being rebirthed in that way. And I know I don't even want to talk about the topic, but it's in the book. And part of, you know, what I experienced in the year, I mean, besides all the grief and the death, and that's just a whole other thing that's also in there. But you know, the Black Lives Matter and what happened with George Floyd was also a part of what went on. And as a white woman, being checked by my privilege when I wasn't even aware of it was just a stark moment. And I felt very called to write about that, but it felt very vulnerable to just put myself out there when I'm so attached to being right or looking a certain way and not wanting to say the wrong thing. And it just felt really right to be vulnerable in the ways I didn't even realize I was being racist or just being protected by my privilege, and just putting that out on the pages, because feeling called as, you know, a white woman, white person, to kind of then support others in coming out of their privilege. And so it was with that coming through, and just like, wow, this year is really showing, you know, all of the things. I think I said it, it's like all of the things in the kitchen cabinet. If you don't take, you know, I'm an organizer, so you can't clean up a place without taking out what's already there and all the way in the back. And I kind of feel like, you know, 2020 was that. We were being shown what's all the way in the back of the kitchen cabinets, and it came to the surface so that we can now put them back in a way that works for everybody, because it's not.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it really feels like we're still in that messy place of rebirth right now. And we probably will be for quite some time.
And I hope we are, because if we just sweep it under the rug, we're just going to repeat what's not working. So I do hope it stays messy, as uncomfortable as it is, but then it shows that there's real change coming. And I hope that that's what's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. I'm very excited for your book to make its way into the world as well.
Yeah, me too.
You are so ready to birth that now. It's like, I'm done. Thank you. Oh, so Lucy. Hey, Lucy.
Hi.
So your piece was called Full Circle, and there were, when the theme of grief like came through very strongly in your piece. I know, like, you lost your dad last year. I lost my dad last year. And I remember us being together in February last year. We were together in Glastonbury with Sarah and
Yes.
Katie Brockhurst as well, who author of Social Media for a New Age. And that's hard. We had no idea what was coming. It's just incredible to think about that now. And I wonder what it was like to write your piece and to bring through those feelings of grieving in a year when there was so much else going on, and it's something you speak to in your piece as well. What was that like for you?
I mean, it's hard to even consider that last year, February, was the same year, because it changed so dramatically, both from a personal perspective and then from a global perspective. And writing the piece for me was it was a very cathartic experience, because my dad, actually, interestingly enough, the piece is called Full Circle, and next week it's a year since he passed. And he passed 2 weeks before every country in the world went into lockdown. So, when he died, I stopped writing everything. I stopped. It was just a full stop. And that's unusual for me, because I've always been writing. I love to write. I love to express myself with words. I do morning pages. I keep journals, and there was just nothing. And so when I came across this experience, the 2020 opportunity, and I felt really drawn to it, and I thought to myself, well, this is a chance to sit down and to get clarity in your thoughts, and also to make sense of some of the emotions that I was swimming in, because grief, you don't know how grief is going to affect you until you're in it. And I'd been through grief before. I lost my mum 5 years prior, and that was a different experience. But this kind of was compounded with everything else that was going on in the world. And what was difficult for me to navigate was the anger and the rage. I was very angry with this global situation with regards to the pandemic, and feeling like I didn't have enough space to grieve. The grief almost felt like it was, I think I said in one of the things, that it felt like COVID-19 was an overbearing aunt in a play, who kind of came in and took over and made it all about them. And so it was very cathartic to just express those emotions, from anger to that sense of bereavement in a piece, and to be raw for a change, to be real, and to allow it to be there, and to also hopefully be a piece that is comforting for anyone who is experiencing grief, because we do have a process for everything in the world that we live in. There is even a process for grief, believe it or not, but it doesn't always, I don't always fit the mold for those processes. And so I wanted to say, like, it's okay if you just have enough energy to get through one day. So
absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lucy,
Thank
for
you.
writing it. I know I resonated very, very strongly with it, and I think so many others will as well, because so many of us experienced loss of one kind or another over the past year. And actually, as you're speaking about COVID-19 being like this overbearing aunt, I'm thinking what I love about this book is, yes, obviously, like, we were all impacted by, and we all still are being impacted by the global pandemic. But actually, like, this book, it's like it's not pushed to one side, because like we're all everyone's been writing through that lens, but it's not something like, there's so much more that comes through in this book. So
exactly.
yeah. I'm just trying to think what COVID-19 is in this book rather than an overbearing heart.
Yeah, I mean, at that, that was the feeling that when I was writing the piece, it was the feeling that wanted to be expressed onto the page, because
Yeah,
that was how I felt it was that period of time, that transition time where my dad had passed away. I managed to get back into the country on the last flight into England before the countries went into lockdown. And then it shifted into this whole new way of being with regards to the virus. So, that was a kind of a how do I navigate this? What is this? And what does it feel like? And it was a very personal response, very personal. And it was kind of uncensored.
Perfect. Perfect. And also, as we've been speaking about, like, it can feel incredibly vulnerable to be putting something like that out into the world. So thank you. Thank you for writing it, and thank you for sharing it. We really appreciate you. Thanks, Lucy. So Sarah Wheel.
Hi.
Hey. So your piece, 2020 was going to be my year. I think
It was. It was so going to be my year.
And maybe it was.
Maybe it was.
I think, yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, I think it was in a way for all of us, but maybe not in the way we expected. But I think like a lot of people are going to resonate with that idea of coming into 2020. Like there was this kind of like collective sense of, yes, things are kind of changing and like something is going to happen this year. And obviously it was, but not in the way maybe that we hoped for or imagined. But in your piece, Sarah, you talk about 2020 kind of being this year zero. And I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that and how you experienced it in that way. Like, in what way was it year zero for you? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah. I think so much of my experience of 2020 was really a tug of war between this sort of collective we that I'm a part of and glad to be a part of. Like, I really think that's where we're headed, is this sort of collaborative we first way. But my me was feeling invisible and ignored and lost. And just these, I kept having these like inner child temper tantrums of like, what about me? Like, because my experience ultimately was pretty mild, given, the opportunity that could have been what came to me and came to so many in 2020. And so there was a real sense that 2020, at the beginning of what I thought the year would be, was like a finish line. It was going to be when I accomplished everything I ever wanted to accomplish. I'd had such intense intuitive hits that this was true, and then it wasn't. And I just became really, really clear in sort of a void of like, okay, well, I don't know what this year is going to be. It finally was a chance for my brain to step out of the room, stop trying to create meaning around what I think my intuition is telling me, and just let my intuition be what my intuition is. And then it just sort of came to me that I had a vision of what my human brain can imagine was the Big Bang, this beginning of the universe as we know it. And my very limited understanding of it is that the entire world existed as pure potential on the head of a pin, and then a force that it couldn't sustain exploded it. And this, like, we think of so much of like the apocalypse as an explosion, as an end. But in that case, like, if you could have seen what the Big Bang would be, everyone would have assumed that was the end of the world. And in turn, it ended up being the beginning of everything. Like, everything we imagine exists because of that moment. And I really, really feel that 2020 was that. I think that I think we're still on the head of the pin. I'm not quite sure we've had the full momentum of what we can be yet. And so writing that piece was such an interesting reflection of oh my gosh, you're so human. Look at you trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. Like you don't need to understand. You don't need, and the ways that my mind jumps into explain my intuition, which is really just to keep me comfortable and having a sense of safety and security, and a sense of, well, if I know what's coming, then I'm safe. Because I knew 2020 was coming. I felt it. There was a disconnect between what I would allow myself. There's a part of me that thought, well, like other people are going to suffer. I don't know. And humbling, and grateful for the experience, and excited for what 2021 has to offer. Yeah. Because I have intuitive hits about that too, but I'm just trying not to jump in and make stories about it. Let it be. Let it be.
Exactly. Yeah. So interesting what you're saying there. It's like we're just continually trying to make meaning of like our experience and like our intuition, and yeah.
And that, and if I'm honest, that's what so much of the pain was of 2020. It was not. I mean, yes, it was a lot. You know, there were external things that brought pain, but they were short. It was a quick cycle. What brought me the prolonged pain in most of the year was the stories I was telling myself and the expectations that I had that weren't based in any truth. It was entirely a story that I'd made up in my mind to make myself comfortable and safe. And yeah, I'm endeavoring to do that less. We'll see. And that's why, I mean, one of the things as I was ending my piece, I was writing and I was like, oh my God, this is the clearest I've ever been about this year. Isn't this exciting? And I literally, my fingers hadn't left the keyboard before it started to float away. Yeah. I could feel the wisdom just sort of go, oh, okay. Yeah. And I think that's the nature of any learning or wisdom, is you learn the lesson and you anchor it, and then it floats away so that when it revisits you, you have a choice to remember it or learn it again. Yeah. Yeah. Love that. I had complete like tingles when you were talking about like the head of the pin and how we're still there. And Sue is asking you to just type your intuitive hits about 2021 into the chat so we can all see them. Like people watching won't be able to. I will try, but it's just a feeling. I don't know. It's hard to put words to. Yeah, I get it. Well, and I'm scared to be wrong again. But you know, it will make good content for another piece. Well, for 2021s, we'll just read that. 2021 was going to be my year. Oh, I love it. And that's what, you know, that's why I really have always thought of this book as being this time capsule that we can come back to and maybe laugh at, like, look what we thought. What? We had no idea. I just think like, oh, we're so cute. We like think we understand what's going on. We don't. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sarah. And now on to another Sarah. Sarah Lloyd, yay! Who is responsible for us all being here and for this book? Oh, you're muted, Sarah. You can just transmit your...
I thought I could, you know, telepathically or...
Exactly. You know. Let's do that. Oh, so your piece, 2020, thank you, about your experience of last year. And I wanted to ask you, because obviously your work is all about like the media, like, you know, publicity, PR, helping people to kind of get their message out there. And like the media was such like, is always like such a strong influence. But last year it just felt like that became even more intense. And I wonder how your work shifted, or how you feel the way you work shifted in 2020.
Yeah, it was like a massive clanging penny drop, actually. It was The moment for me, I mean, I bought into the fear. I was there, I was clapping, I was doing rainbows for the NHS, I was all involved in all of that stuff. Totally bought into it. Totally scared, thinking we're all going to turn into zombies, needing to, you know, stockpiling the garage, all that kind of stuff. Because at that particular point in time, I went into mummy lion mode, like, you're not touching my kids. And it was only when so obviously my career's been in PR for my whole adult life. I've worked in big companies, and I know how brand reputation is managed. And it was only when Dominic Cummings got in his car and drove to the other side of the UK, the PR guy behind the whole of the whole thing, thought it was okay to do that. And I was like, hang on a minute, you're the PR guy, you are the one that is telling us all to stay inside and we should be scared of this thing, and yet you are doing that. So that's the moment for me where I really smelt a rat. And I started to question absolutely everything that I was being shown. And it was like someone had taken a pair of glasses off, and I could finally see what was being, we were basically being, I mean, I wrote even today on Instagram that we were put under a spell. We were told to stay inside, and they kept repeating that message. And it's like psychological warfare. And I've never ever seen it before, or I've just never noticed it before. But the mainstream media was a massive catalyst in sharing that message that the government wanted to portray. Now, I don't know the reasons for why, and you know, I'm still continuing to go down rabbit holes and explore and research, but I feel like the one thing that was very obvious to me is that there was no balance. There's no Switzerland in anything that we're being shared. So that, for me, I went looking for Switzerland, essentially.
I love that way of putting it.
Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah. And how has that impacted on your work that you do now, do you feel?
It massively shifted everything that I wanted to do. And you know, I went from being very focused on being working with the mainstream media, because that's what we're taught to do in publicity, to considering new outlets, small outlets, growing outlets, people that want to share a truth. And I feel like that's what, I mean, for me, 2020 was my year, because I got huge clarity in that we're being told lies. We're not being shown the absolute truth. And when they do show the truth, it's really, really tiny. So it's kind of just making me search for the truth. And I think it's made me very clear on what my mission is, with regards to working with clients and sharing stories in the press. Now, the press is great, and they are, you know, they've been around for years, and there are some benefits, but I think it's just being very careful in sharing truth. And that's something that really came through for me. And I can see a huge collapse coming. My intuition is saying that it won't continue for, well, I'm not saying it will collapse this year, but it's crumbling, and I can see that coming. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, thank you. I saw other Sarah nodding there, so oh, part of the intuitive nudges. Thanks so much, Sarah. Oh, we could have a whole, like, each of these kind of little snippets could be whole other conversations. So thank you so much. Thank you. Lorraine. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Oh, so your piece, If You Don't Experience Life, You Can't Write About It, was about your experience of a relationship that you had like throughout 2020. And I don't want to say too much about your piece, but I know when you were writing the piece, kind of November last year, that relationship and what had happened was very fresh for you, like literally. I think it was kind of unfolding really as you were writing it. And I wondered what it was like to write something that was so like literally kind of happening at that time, or just happened, something so
Yeah.
special to you.
I think, like lots of us, it really flowed in the moment. You know, when you just get the downloads, the words just flow onto the paper. I'm very much a hand writer, first time around. So yeah, it just flowed. And I think really the whole piece for me was a snapshot of this beautiful, transformative relationship that helped me so far along my personal growth against this backdrop of the global pandemic. And it was a long distance relationship, so we met at the beginning of March, then we couldn't see each other till July, then we had a little bit together, and then the relationship ended in November, and we're still good friends. It's it's a beautiful experience that we both went through, and I think we both needed it. For me, coming into 2020, I'd realized I'd been very stuck. I'd been a single parent for sort of 8 or 9 years, and was very much stuck in that masculine energy, which I think a lot of women will relate to, of taking on all this weight on our shoulders and trying to do everything, run the business and earn the money and look after the children, and all the things that we take on. And it wasn't till I broke my ankle at the end of 2019 that I realized I was ready to give up the struggle. And so I invested in the support I needed and really went into 2020 with this beautiful just feeling of just letting go and being open to receive whatever came my way. And then literally within days of signing up to a sisterhood membership group, this man appeared in my life, and then sort of the story unfolds from there. So yeah, transformation against a really strange backdrop.
Yeah. And like I said, that's what I love. Like each of these pieces is so unique, and like writing about something completely different, although we had obviously this kind of common shared experience in a lot of ways throughout last year. And I remember speaking to you like early, or it might even have been late in 2020, 2019, when you did break your ankle, and like the shift that kind of activated in you. And it kind of reflects like what happened last year, like collectively breaking our ankle in a way, and having to kind of surrender to that. So yeah,
Exactly. And of course, I'd already had 2 months forced sitting on the sofa in an inflatable boot. So I'd already done that through the end of 2019, and literally had this little bit of hope and expectation at the beginning of the year, and then the world shut down. So I was like, oh, I've done this before, and I'd homeschooled years before, so like everything was just like, I've done this before. I've run my business from home for years. So yeah, it was interesting. But yes, surrender, as you say, was the thing, and being open to receive the love and support and help from other people. So yeah, giving people hope, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, gorgeous. Thank you so much, Lorraine.
Thank you, Nicola.
And mentioning hope leads nicely on to the next piece, which is by Holly. Hey Holly, which is called A Hope for Humanity. And such a powerful piece, Holly. And I know, like, you did the Unbound Writing Challenge back in 2019, I think. You kind of were writing then, and then did it again in 2020. And I remember you saying like how much kind of had shifted in your writing over the course of that year. And this piece is like, all of the pieces are so personal, but this one felt especially kind of vulnerable, actually. And I wonder what it was like for you to write about something so personal.
It's funny because at the time I tried writing with the prompts that we were given for this book, and nothing was coming, and I was like, oh, that's really not like me. And so I remembered your tip about sometimes just asking, well, what wants to come through? And the piece that I wrote just flowed out. without really any thought or any direction. It was just, I guess over the last year, as you said, a lot has changed. I'd done the Unbound Writing Challenge and set this intention to write a piece around childhood sexual abuse, because it's one of these stories that is hidden in society, like so many stories in 2020. Mm-hmm. And I would love to sit here and say, oh, I thought about it like that, but it's all come in hindsight. It was reading the book. When I started to read everybody's pieces, I was piecing it together inside myself of, wow, we have such a shared humanity in this book. We all suffer, we all struggle, we all have this full range of emotions all at the same time. From, you can feel totally in your authenticity and authority, and at the same time in despair. And that's what this piece really was. It was like bearing my soul about my experience of healing from that. And I think over the last year, I've only really found the words to put to it, because it's so deeply in my cells rather than in my head. And to kind of bring that out in a way is really scary. It's vulnerable is not the word, it's terrifying. And even to the point where, the last week, in terms of posting about this book, I've even been thinking, do I want to tell people about being part of this?
Yeah.
And it's been reading everybody else's pieces that's made me go, oh, wow, it's so important that we speak from our hearts and we say what we see. You don't have to judge it. You don't have to make sense of it, but just say what you see. And so, and I know, I think it was Lucy before spoke about anger, and that's really the core of this piece. It's like anger is a legitimate response to boundaries being crossed. I mean, how many of us are feeling that way about 2020, right?
Yeah.
That's what was coming to the surface. And as so many of you said, I just think it's inspired me to actually step up and step out a lot more. So thank you all for that influence and this amazing project.
Thank you, Holly. Yeah, and this is just the beginning of it. Now the book gets to go out and make its way into the world and connect with the readers, and everyone who reads it is going to have their own unique experience, like of each of the pieces. So the ripple effects are going to be huge. So thank you. Thanks so much, Holly.
I think that's the scary bit as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
The ripple. For so many of us, how many of us don't want to make ripples? I'm like, let's make some waves, can we?
Yeah.
Let's
We're
splash.
conditioned like not to make ripples, but this book cannot help but make some big waves. So yeah, and I think there's something about doing that together that feels really powerful. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Holly. Mariah. Hey, Mariah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
So
Hello.
your piece was called Homecoming, which again, just that word, I think a lot of us can probably resonate with in relation to 2020. And I wonder if you could say something about how 2020 felt like a year of homecoming for you personally. How did you experience that?
Yeah, it's funny because I started this piece. I left it a long time, as I often do, right up until the deadline, and I had the chance of doing it in an hour. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write this in an hour. And like many of you, I use the prompt that you often give us. What wants to be expressed through me at this time. And it wasn't until right towards the end of writing that piece that I realized actually what had happened during that year for me. So it was a bit of a revelation when I read it back. So the first part of the piece felt like it was speaking to the metamorphosis that we've all been through. I can't think there'd be anybody in the world that hasn't experienced it. When the caterpillar goes through to the butterfly and has to completely, utterly change everything inside of itself to become something new. Then the second piece was about me just allowing myself to feel everything, because like so many, I just felt angry and pissed off, fed up, to be told I can't go and see my sons, I can't see my family, I can't see my friends, I can't go to the gym, I can't do this, I can't even go out of the house. So I had to work through all of that. And every now and again, I would hit this inner wall, is how I describe it. And I hit it again on Saturday, just this weekend gone, where I just burst into tears on the sofa. So I was like, it's just too much. It's too much. And I suppose in many ways, we're lucky in our family. We haven't lost anyone to COVID, but in the last 6 weeks, we've had some really, really difficult challenges of health with extended members of the family and people dying of non-COVID related stuff. So for me, the homecoming was I suppose realizing that actually when I take away all the distractions of going out and having coffee and having lunch and, you know, taking myself off to write somewhere else or going to the gym, which isn't a distraction, it is actually something I enjoy doing and is good for me. But when I take all of that away, who do I become? And it's similar to, I think, to what Sue said. I really resonated with so much of what you said. It's like, well, who am I then? Because the other thing that was going on was my business had just accelerated to 100%, 100 miles an hour. So I had a lot of demand. And I was having, for the first time in my life, to come back to structure. So I'd had it in my corporate days imposed on me, where you do this. But in the last 20 years of working for myself, I haven't really bothered with structure. I've just been flowing. But for the first time, I had to do it. And I actually realized I enjoyed it. I got more done. I felt more productive. So there were lots of different homecomings. One was realizing actually I actually can have a really good relationship with structure. Two, actually I just needed to feel everything that was coming up. So, in younger years, I wouldn't have allowed the tears, I wouldn't have expressed the anger or the grief or the frustration or anything like that. I would have flatlined and just not done it. But in the piece I talk about, actually, I think I talk about, it's just kind of a judgmental word, wallowing, but I just let myself be a sloth. And I let myself, can't remember the exact words now, but it was very distinct. I just let myself be in that feeling for however long it was there for, without judging it, without trying to transform it with all the tools I've got, without trying to think my way out of it, which is what some other people were trying to help me to do, without pulling my socks up and pulling myself together. It's like, no, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just feeling this as it is, and it's really messy. And my head was saying, oh my God, you can't just let this carry on. You'll never, you're not going to come out of this. You'll just get lost in it or drown in it. And I don't think I've had a year where I've cried so much. And sometimes I felt selfish because I thought, God, some people are crying because they've, we know, in this group, we know, several people who've lost many members of their family through COVID or some other situation. So I didn't have that at the time. That kind of came later. And even that, I thought, well, no, it's not selfish, actually. There's all these other feelings that probably have no relation to what's going on right now, but have been stuffed inside of me and my body for so long that every now and again, I just spontaneously started crying. I remember one day when I went to the supermarket, and I think it was in the very first of that 3-week lockdown. And I hadn't really been out. Well, I hadn't been out because we couldn't, could we? But I went to the supermarket and my hands landed on the handle of the trolley. And I just burst into tears in front of all these people. And I thought, wow, this is like a normal thing I'm doing. I'm getting a trolley and I'm going to get some food. And it's the only time I'm going to be out of the house and seeing other human beings. And I just burst into tears. It was like just a surreal experience. So I think the homecoming was realizing, I could work with structure, and actually it was really helpful. It helped me to get into the writing. So ironically, the stuff that I'm writing about in this piece actually shows up in the book that I'm writing. But I think more than that, it was that jewel in the cave. It was actually just allowing myself to feel.
Yeah.
whatever I was feeling, whenever I was feeling it, with no censorship whatsoever, and regardless of how anyone else might receive it, I suppose, even more so. Yeah, I think that was the homecoming.
Yeah, absolutely. I so resonate with the sloth as well. That is definitely one of my animals. Yeah.
I seriously don't think I've cried so much in a year.
Yeah.
Even through miscarriage and all sorts of other things that have happened, I've just not cried for what looked like no apparent reason.
Yeah.
Or not judge the feelings or anything. And what I learned was actually when I came out the other side of it, I had so much more clarity and so much more energy.
Yeah.
Having allowed myself to stay in that space for so long. And I say so long because it was days sometimes.
Yeah.
Days that I felt in that funk. I think that was the word I used, funk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mariah. I think that's a theme that's coming through from a lot of you, is like this idea of clarity coming through these experiences that we had in 2020. Really powerful. Thanks, Mariah.
Thank
Diana.
you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yay. Hi, Diana. So your piece was called Alchemize, Revolutionize. And I just think 2020 was definitely like a really alchemical year. It really felt like we were in the fire for so many of us. And I wonder if you could speak to like what was alchemized for you last year?
I lost my day job immediately, and that was amazing. It was exactly what I wanted to happen. So I finally had the time and the space for myself. And so I just really dove into that. And I'd been doing a lot of healing work on myself anyway. But I just really went into that stillness, went into that calm, steady voice inside, the one that's quiet, that's always there, the one that's always spewing truths no matter what, the one that if we just really get still, we can connect to at any point. And that's what I consider our divinity. And so I thought, what is my true divine self? And even through all these years of healing and deep work and all of that stuff, I still felt like I hadn't gotten to the real root, the real core of who I am and who I'm here to be. And so it was just getting back to that place. And I'm very connected to Gaia, to Earth Mother, to all of her magic and medicine. And I've been feeling her screaming inside me for years, and that voice wanting to come out. And so I just tapped into that and allowed her to come through me, and pulled together everything that I'd been kind of writing about through the year. My writing hasn't wanted to come out for years. It's trickled out. It's felt forced when I tried to for years and years. And then finally last year, when I was in the stillness and the calm, when I was able to commune with nature and be outside more, and I was able to just, in that space, all this flowed through me and just wanted to come out, and it just felt like this warm hug and embrace that just wanted to pour out all over everyone and give them a big hug.
I can feel that just speaking so much, and I could definitely feel it. As I was reading your piece, like your true voice being just released, like this floodgate of it being open and it just pouring forth. So thank you for sharing it with us, Diana. I'm excited to see what comes next as well in relation to your writing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Sarah Wheeler. I have to say that because we've got quite a few Sarahs.
Similar names as well.
Yeah. So Sarah, your piece was called Spitting Out the Gag of Patriarchy. Really, really powerful. And I think like the theme that comes through so strongly in your piece is about how we can embody our truth, like whatever that is. And I'm wondering how, like what your experience of that was last year. Like, how do you feel you were called to embody your truth even more deeply?
Yeah, oh, that's such a good question. I've just been loving hearing what everybody's saying as well. I'm just sitting here lushing out, enjoying what everybody's been talking about. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to say something now.
Yeah.
Yes. How did that happen for me? How did truth happen for me last year? So having kind of tried to sit with and be with all the mixed feels and emotions at the start of 2020. I remember someone else just in the group earlier saying that they were doing some teaching or there was a retreat or something around February. And it was like, we didn't have any clue what was going to be coming down the line. And now look, all these months later. Similarly, I was teaching a workshop on like February 20th, 2020. And there was somebody in the group who was talking about this virus that was about, and we were like, it's not going to come to anything, we'll be all right. But, you know, so during those times of being at home and going, I'm missing my yoga students and I can't go and teach Reiki in person and I can't do this, that and the other, like going actually into the quietness, I opened the book that I've had for a while, The Artist's Way. And I started writing my morning pages like many people have alluded to on this call. And it was like just mush just coming out of my head to start with, which is the exact purpose of the morning pages. They're not supposed to be anything other than just blah. And then it was like heartbreak just started coming out on the pages, of heartbreak to do with my creativity that was so becoming a vehicle for the truth that I wanted to get out. And I started writing. I've been writing like little bits and pieces like all my life, but I really started writing and putting a journal together when I was recovering from sexual violence and rape, like in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And I knew that one day I was going to write a book about it. And in the morning pages, the book just started to come out. And I was like, Jesus, this is my truth. This is what has to get down on the page and through my pen onto the paper and eventually onto the laptop. And starting to say the things about myself and about the attacks. Also being mindful that, like, putting that material together, I don't want that to be like horribly triggering for people. But actually saying it in a truthful way of like, look, there's a rape culture that we live in. And it's everywhere. It's under our noses. It's even in our homes sometimes. And talking about spitting out the gag of patriarchy, just coming back into the piece that I wrote for 2020 Vision. I just started to call out all the shit that I just thought was fucked up that I'd seen last year, and then really mapping it onto my experience of writing my actual book as well. And came to the sort of conclusion that I'm really open to developing and changing and having it kind of be like a sort of malleable process. But what was coming out onto the page in 2020 Vision was that if you happen to be male and white and have some kind of position of power on top of being male and white, which is already a powerful position in the patriarchy, then you're basically given a free pass just to fuck with people. And there's no accountability. And so having my voice come through as in the eyes of the law, as a victim of a person who's been through some really shit things, and I'm sure I can speak to the fact that lots of people in this group and probably watching on the live as well have been through episodes of harassment and violence, whether it be sexual, race-based, ableism, gender-based. We all have a story to tell, but it actually takes us telling the story in a way that feels right for us and having like the real voices of the people that have been through it, rather than people talking about all the things that I just mentioned that are maybe the ones who are trying to like be helping people with it. And I've got no problem with like the police wanting to talk about it. I've got no problem with like therapists wanting to talk about it, but we need the real voices to come through. Do you know, we need the real voices to come through and say that 11 women are getting raped every hour in England and Wales. And we live in 2021 now, and that's not going to go away. That's not going to stop. But when we speak our truths out, we're going to be injecting a little piece of our soul and ourselves into a world where there's so much like screaming into the void. Do you know what I mean? Like we've talked about this within this group quite a lot, just screaming into this place, and it just falls on deaf ears. And writing for 2020 vision was like, no, the right people are going to read this. It's going to get to the right audience. And the piece that I wrote at the end about, just trying to remember the wording for it, it was something like, pull down your mask, speak your truth, and let truth reign. That truth is whatever story that you want to tell, that you want to put out into the world, and have that be an expression of your heart just getting free. And maybe other people will wake up along the way as well and see some shit that they've wanted to not get their nose up against. Child abuse, racism, gender-based violence. You know, we witnessed on our screens a murder happening of George Floyd this year. And the person who did that will very unlikely go to prison. We need to speak these things. And the conclusions and the answers, I don't have the answers to them, but we have to talk these things and almost in a way use that talking and that writing to be like, no, not in my name anymore. These things can't be happening. Like they will, but I'm withdrawing my consent from it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, again, like so much. Like everyone in the chat is going like crazy. Yay! Love it. And Sarah is a guest on the podcast, the Unbound Writers Club, in a couple of weeks as well, where we kind of dive into some of this and more. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for writing this piece. So powerful. Yeah. Oh, Dinah.
I'm listening to everybody. I've got a response. I've got about 1 million responses, but I'm going to try and.
No, I know. And I did say that we would kind of we'd go for up to an hour. I don't know what I was thinking. So I'm sorry to everyone if you've been thinking this, we're going on. But coming up to the last couple of pieces, one of which is Dinah's, which was called 2020's Line of Desire. And when I read your piece, Dinah, and I think I messaged you about it, it felt like it had this real poetic quality. I mean, it's not kind of, I guess you wouldn't name it as a poem, but it had that quality coming through it. It's just so beautiful to read. It really impacted me so strongly when I read it. And I'm really interested to hear like what your experience was of writing this piece.
Oh, well, it was like last minute. I think I finished it a minute to midnight because I was putting, I've been, everything that we've been talking about is like my reality in the 1970s. Do you know what I mean? It's like really difficult to think this is 2021 and what the hell? But I mean, it's difficult to not just think, kill me now, you know, but there are more of us of all shapes, sizes, colors, fucking whatever planet we're from, that are speaking more and more. And that you know, that really touches me because I'm just starting to just think, you know, what is the point? There's been decades and decades and it's just seems to be getting worse and worse, but actually it's everything coming to the surface. And so I have difficulty writing because I feel like somebody's fucking got me by the throat and is trying to stop me all the time. So I need a community to even get out that thing at 1 minute to midnight, whatever that was, you know. And I don't even know what it was anymore. And but I got something out, and it was partially strangled scream of good. I'm fucking glad 2020 happened, and I hope 2021 is even bloody worse, actually. So that's what I feel about it all.
That is just fantastic. Diana, you were such a pioneer. You really are. And whenever I hear you speak, I'm just like, yes. And I can't wait for more of your writing to be getting out there, because you have such a strong and powerful voice. So thank you. Thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. I just love you. Let's keep doing this.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, so Sarika's just joined us. Welcome.
Thank you. For some reason, I thought it was at 8 p.m.
Oh,
so
no.
I misread that.
That's okay. Well, you're here. Yay. So actually, we'll come to you because like Carrie's piece is, Carrie's poem was the last one in the book. So we'll come to you first, Sarika. And your piece was called 2020 Year of Transcendence. And you talk a lot about yourself as a mother and your experience as a mother in your piece, and how 2020 felt like this year where we were collectively birthing something, which came through in Tonya's piece as well. But what do you feel was birth, like 2020 birth for you? That?
Wow, thank you. And I wish I heard everyone's shares. Oh my God, can't wait to go back and listen. I don't know what was birthed for me specifically, but it did feel like we were going through a collective birthing. And for me, I just felt, even though there seemed to be so much like shit going on, I felt that there was like this gold that was being also pulled out. You know, there was an alchemy of some sort. And personally, for me, a new life was birthed. You know, I moved into a new house. I wrote a book, you know, with Unbound Press. I met all of you guys. I mean, that all happened in 2020. So there was something dying and something that was birthed. And I think that that's been going on a collective level as well. You know, as we're facing our global suffering, whatever the different forms are, there was a joining in the pain that was so universal that we haven't seen before. And I think because of that, and I think birth happens through pain. I mean, there's pleasure too, you know, there is a pleasure in birth and giving birth to something, but there's so much pain in the contractions and so much uncertainty. Like, what's my life going to look like after I give birth to this? It's scary, you know. For me, before I birthed my first daughter, I was scared that I was going to go into a tunnel and never come out. Like, that's how I felt, you know, like, would I be responsible for these children for the rest of my life? It just seemed too big of a burden to carry. And it felt irreversible, you know, and I think that's what initially that fear of birthing felt like for me. And even after I birthed my daughter, my first one, I had postpartum depression and anxiety and things like that. And so being with that discomfort and using it for some sort of purification, like there was a purification going on with all the hormonal, you know, surges on me physiologically, emotionally, mentally. And when I came through it, I felt so much clearer, so much stronger. But at the same time, I had to find my inner light again. So I feel like 2020 kind of joined us in that process together of like going through some sort of death and a rebirth, and whether it's death of your belief systems or what's possible, you know, what health and wellness or whatever, success or happiness or love looks like, and seeing it shattered and then being rebuilt again. On a larger sense, I think that we're all going through this motherhood experience in some way. And I look forward to what we are creating 2021 onwards.
Yeah, we're still in it for sure, I think.
Yeah, we're still in it. We're still, I don't know whether we're still going through contractions. Are we like stuck in the canal, you know? Are we like going back up, you know, into the womb?
Exactly.
That's what my baby did. She went back up into the womb.
Wow.
And so it was a really long labor process for sure.
Yeah.
But the joy on the other side, the birth of this new being, is exciting.
Yeah.
6 months away.
We're about 6 months in.
Yeah.
Still a way to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Sarika. I'm really glad you could join us. Perfect timing. So Carrie, your gorgeous poem, An Angel's Prayer, closes 2020 Vision, and it just felt so perfect for that to be the piece that we closed the book with. And what came through for me in your piece was this real sense of hope. And I think it was gorgeous to kind of end the book on that note as well, after kind of this incredible journey that we've been on, writing the pieces and also for somebody reading the book. And I wanted to ask you the question, you know, where do you see there being hope as we move forwards into 2021 and beyond?
Well, thank you. I feel like, you know, people are way comfortable in their fear and anger, and it's time to step out of that. And I think hope is in love and coming together. And I really hope that that my poem will, you know, let people be able to relax their fear, relax their hate, even and their anger, and start seeing that if we come together, and maybe if it's prayer or, you know, protests or whatever it is that you know, gets your voice out there, that there can be hope at the end, and peace and unity. So yeah, kind of where it started from is just seeing all the resistance to change, resistance to feeling hope, and it just seemed like everybody was angry and fearful in 2020, and we were scared of everything, right? We're scared of the virus, we're scared of racism, we're scared of you know, maybe even being scared of being heard, scared of who the president is, and all this crazy stuff that really we have the power to change.
Beautiful. And what was it like for you to write that piece, that poem?
Very cathartic, because I don't know, I always have like this little connection with angels, or whatever that is. Maybe it's just a love of them, and just really sitting in all the demise of humanity that we've seen over 2020, and wanting to bring some hope and sunshine into the world, and let people know that that is still a very tangible thing, that we can have hope and love, and we don't have to sit in this anger, fear, and separation. So I wanted to just spread that joy and hope with the world.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you.
Such an honor.
Oh, wow. It's a complete honor to, you know, be part of curating these pieces and sharing them out into the world as part of 2020 Vision. Oh, I don't know if you can see it that well. Yay! Thank you all so much. I don't know how I didn't cry during that. Been so powerful hearing each of you speaking about your pieces. And for those watching, 2020 Vision is now available it's definitely available on Amazon, Kindle and paperback, and it will be making its way out via other retailers as well very soon. So get yourself a copy. It's such a powerful read. And like, there's so much love in the chat here amongst these kind of community of authors. I can see us doing much, much more together. So thank you. I really appreciate all of you for being part of this, and I'm so excited to see where it leads. Let the magic ripple out, and yeah, let's see what wants to emerge around this book. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye.